This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Welcome to Unmissable with me, Nabila Jamal. Thanks very much for tuning in. 9 p.m. we bring you a power-packed hour of all the news from India and around the world. First up in our three segments, Day to Night, let's take you through S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, slamming the UN, calling out Western hypocrisy on Kashmir, says that the UN turned invasion into mere dispute. And then into our deep dive segment, Sunita Williams, who is nearing Earth now, touching down. The countdown begins. SpaceX capsule carrying the stranded NASA astronaut and Butch Wilmore, all racing home. Of course, an insight into how this impacts their health. And finally, our Viral Watch segment on what's breaking the internet. Ori, the biggest internet sensation, facing heat over having alcohol in Vaishno Devi. I'm going to take you through all that news in detail. Let me take you through the Nagpur violence. As Nagpur burns, we're looking at priorities there completely crumbling. The last 24 hours has really raised several concerns on the priorities our lawmakers have. This has exposed what people really want, especially the politicians, people ready to spill blood over Aurangzeb, a 17th century ruler buried in Sambhajinagar, Maharashtra. All it took was literally one film, Chhawa, that reignited emotions among Maharashtrians over Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, who was brutally treated by Aurangzeb. How it all unfolded as tempers really flared. We saw politicians of the Mahayuti and Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena demanding that Aurangzeb's tomb be removed. And then quickly, right-wing groups jumped in. In fact, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad as well as the Bajrang Dal jumped in, staged protests in Nagpur and burnt Aurangzeb's effigies. This is how it all started, and quickly rumors spread that these groups are, the protesting groups there, as you see on the CCTV footage, basically set fire to the Quran. The holy book was desecrated. These rumors eventually erupted in chaos. Arson and mob attack on police and civilians that was completely widespread in Nagpur. In fact, rioters unleashed mayhem with swords, axes and sticks. It took Nagpur police literally hours to restore peace there. In fact, eyewitnesses claim that several distress calls were made to the police, but help came only an hour and a half later. The police too were attacked. 33 officers, including 3 DCPs, were injured. Now, instead of addressing the failure to control the violence here, politicians have conveniently blamed the film Chhawa for triggering unrest. Chief Minister Fadnavis has labelled this violence as pre-planned. The question, of course, remains on who let this spiral out of control.
नागपुर के महल इलाके में जिस प्रकार से तनाव की स्थिति निर्माण हुई, ये बहुत ही निंदनीय है। जिस प्रकार से कुछ लोगों ने पत्थरबाजी की है, पुलिस पर भी पत्थर फेंके हैं, ये बिल्कुल गलत है। मैं स्वयं इन सारी घटनाओं पर नज़र रखकर हूँ। मैंने पुलिस कमिश्नर को ये कहा है कि कानून व्यवस्था बनाने के लिए जो भी कड़े से कड़े कदम उठाने की आवश्यकता हो, उठाए जाए और शांति को बनाया जाए। अगर कोई दंगा करता है, कोई पुलिस पर पत्थर फेंकता है, कोई समाज में तनाव निर्माण करता है, तो ऐसे सभी लोगों के ऊपर कड़ी से कड़ी कार्रवाई की जाए।
नागपुर में जो दुर्घटना हुई है बहुत ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। जो आगजनी हुई है, जहाँ पर कई लोग 2-4 हज़ार लोग इकट्ठा होकर जो समाज कंटक थे, उन्होंने कई घरों को वहाँ पर मोमिनपुरा है, महाल एरिया है, चिटनीस पार्क है, यहाँ पर इकट्ठा होकर लोगों के घरों को लक्ष्य कर दिया, टारगेट कर दिया। वहाँ मोमिनपुरा में एक भी गाड़ी खड़ी नहीं की। इसका मतलब ये होता है कि ये पूर्व नियोजित साजिश थी क्या? इसकी भी पुलिस तफ्तीश कर रही है।
Now, as we see, for 3 weeks, Aurangzeb has dominated Maharashtra's political discourse. The film's portrayal of his cruelty against Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj has fueled outrage, which certain groups have eagerly capitalized on. The opposition has lashed out at the government's handling of law and order, accusing them of using this controversy to distract and deviate from the real issues of farmers' suicide, women's safety and inflation. Let's hear it from the opposition.
नागपुर के इतिहास में 300 साल के इतिहास में कभी हिंदू मुस्लिम दंगा वहां नहीं हुआ। ये आज जहां भारतीय जनता पार्टी केंद्र में भी है, राज्य में भी है, आखिर क्या कारण है कि ऐसा दंगा भड़का? पिछले कई दिनों से बीजेपी और उससे जुड़े हुए लोग और संगठन औरंगजेब की कब्र को एक मुद्दा बना रहे थे। औरंगजेब का इतिहास 300 साल पुराना इतिहास है। आज उसको एक विवाद का जरिया बनाना किसको सूट करता है, किसका उससे हित होता है, ये हमें सबको सोचना होगा। बजरंग दल और विश्व हिंदू परिषद ने एक प्रोटेस्ट की घोषणा की थी इसी मुद्दे को लेकर। क्या व्यवस्था थी कि कानून न टूटे, शांति न भंग हो, ये सवाल पूछना बनता है। नागपुर की जनता से हम सब अपील करते हैं कि आप शांति और अमन बनाए रखें। इस तरह की राजनीति जो विवाद पैदा करती है, इसका शिकार न बने, क्योंकि इससे आपका कोई लाभ नहीं होना। लाभ जिनका होना है वो सत्ता में रहने वाले लोग हैं, उन्हीं का लाभ होना है, आपका नहीं होना।
आप मेरी रिएक्शन पूछ रहे हैं नागपुर की घटना पे, लेकिन मुझे ये जानना है कि मुख्यमंत्री कार्यालय से क्यों ना कोई रिएक्शन आई जब अफवाहें फैलने लगी थी। जब भी किसी शहर में ऐसी घटना होती है, और ये तो खुद मुख्यमंत्री का शहर है, स्वयं उनका शहर है, मुख्यमंत्री भी है, वो गृह मंत्री भी है, और ये अनुमान लगाया जाता है, मैंने भी सीएमओ काफी नजदीक से देखा है, कभी भी ऐसी घटना होती है तो पहला रिपोर्ट सीएमओ को आता है, सीएम के मोबाइल फोन पे आता है, होम डिपार्टमेंट भी आता है, दोनों डिपार्टमेंट्स उनके साथ है। क्या उनको पता नहीं था ये होने वाला है? मेरा अंदाज यही है कि भाजपा को महाराष्ट्र का मणिपुर करना है। मणिपुर में अगर आप देखें तो पिछले 1 साल से जैसी बातें हो रही है वैसे ही दंगे हो रहे हैं, किसी ना किसी को जलाया जा रहा है, किसी को मारा जा रहा है। क्या आज वहां इन्वेस्टमेंट जाएगी? क्या कोई पर्यटन जाएगा? नहीं जाएगा। और यही उनको महाराष्ट्र का करना है, यही हाल उनको महाराष्ट्र के करने हैं। और जहां जहां भाजपा को शासन चलाने नहीं आता है वहां दंगे भड़काते।
जो स्टेटमेंट्स एमिनेट हुए हैं, जो स्टेटमेंट दिए गए हैं मिनिस्टर्स की तरफ से, अभी भी दिए जा रहे हैं, भाई आप रूल ऑफ लॉ को फॉलो करिए ना। आप तो भारत के संविधान पर आपने ओथ लिया है, तो आप कैसे प्रोवोकेटिव स्टेटमेंट्स क्यों दे रहे हैं आप? भाई मुझे किसी चीज कोई चीज पसंद नहीं है, आपको कोई चीज पसंद नहीं है, तो कोई भी अपनी नापसंद का इजहार कानून को हाथ में ले करेगा क्या? ये देखने की जरूरत है। तो ये बहुत गलत हो रहा है, सरकार की जिम्मेदारी है, ये सरकार की गलती है, इंटेलिजेंस की फेलियर है। उस जगह जहां से महाराष्ट्र के मुख्यमंत्री आते हैं, और ये जो वायलेंस हुआ है हमारे केंद्र मंत्री के घर के करीब है पूरा, ये बड़ी गलत बात हो रही है।
Now remember, this wasn't just about right-wing outrage. Samajwadi Party MLA Abu Azmi fueled fire to this entire controversy, defending Aurangzeb as a good administrator and calling Chhawa, the film, a distortion of history. That one comment sent tempers soaring. 2 criminal cases have been filed against Abu Azmi, despite him apologizing for what he said. The question here, of course, remains, do our leaders not see the triggers? Or do they just deliberately ignore these triggers? They stoke fire, they let streets erupt, they leave police to finally bear the brunt, and it's always the people who end up paying the price. Now, shifting our focus to Karnataka's Bengaluru, the Bangalore Metro Rail Corporation, the BMRCL as it's called, has withdrawn its latest recruitment notice for train operators following some intense backlash and opposition from pro-Kannada groups. What's really triggered the controversy here was a March 12th notification by the BMRCL relaxing the Kannada language requirement for hiring 50 loco pilots on contract. The policy allowed candidates with no prior knowledge of Kannada to apply, providing, in fact, the clause that was given as per the notice there was that you learn Kannada language within a year from joining. Now, pro-Kannada activists strongly objecting to this move. They've argued that this marginalizes local job seekers and it favors non-Kannadigas to apply. The Kannada Development Authority, KDA, and several pro-Kannada organizations demanded an immediate rollback and a reversal of this order. Even Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivkumar intervened, directing the BMRCL to reconsider this policy. Remember, the BMRCL is run collectively by the state and the centre. That's D.K. Shivkumar taking to Twitter to basically ask BMRCL to rethink. And we saw BMRCL quickly turning around, withdrawing this notice, reaffirming the government's commitment to protecting Kannada interests and ensuring fair representation according to them. Now, BMRCL is expected to revise its hiring policies to align with the state's regulations, ensuring that local candidates remain the focus here. But the question, of course, did BMRCL give in too easy? Karnataka's capital is a global tech hub, and imposing such strict language requirements could limit the talent acquisition, particularly for a metro system that serves a diverse population. In fact, what we would have expected was BMRCL to engage in a dialogue, tweaking the policy to strike a balance. They could have maybe made Kannada training mandatory before hiring rather than post-recruitment. But by caving in so instantly, it really sends out a precedent here to say that protests can dictate policy. Now, taking you through this gold smuggling case that's really rocked Karnataka Assembly and shocked the country alike. Ranya Rao's case that's being investigated thoroughly. As it gets murkier, the question remains, did Ranya Rao pull off this heist alone? Investigation now points to Ranya Rao's key accomplice here, and that's Tarun Raju. Tarun Raju, who's the son of a prominent Bengaluru hotelier. If you can show images of Tarun Raju on our screens, we're going to take you through Tarun Raju, who seems to be a budding star himself. That's him on the screen there. He's a budding actor. His father is a hotelier, seems to be running many star hotels in Bengaluru. In fact, we hear that they also run companies where they provide internet services in the city. So someone who comes from a moneyed wealth background, but Tarun allegedly helped Ranya Rao in this gold smuggling racket through their Dubai-based firm they set up together called Veera Diamonds Trading LLC. While Ranya was the sole investor here, Tarun handled transactions under his name. Their company imported gold duty-free into Dubai, but investigators say that it was smuggled into India instead. She basically lied at the airport that she was taking that gold into Geneva and other countries, but post-immigration, she would then basically plan her way into India. Now, how she pulled that off, one only wonders. Investigation due to reveal a lot more. Ranya made nearly 27 trips last year alone, ferrying all that gold back and forth. Officials claim that she moved 1.7 crore from India to Dubai. That also now fuels suspicion of large-scale Hawala transaction. The case has rocked the Karnataka Assembly meanwhile. Many BJP leaders alleging a gold smuggling mafia with Hawala links. In fact, they suspect that there are 2 ministers also involved, and many of the opposition leaders there demanding that the ministers' names be disclosed. Who's involved in this case? Finally, the bigger question that looms here is how did Ranya Rao manage to walk through that airport premises, the arrivals of Bengaluru airport, with 14.2 kgs of gold strapped to her body? The Home Minister has now ordered a probe into possible misuse of protocol services at the airport. Who else is part of this smuggling network and a racket? Answers only could shake Karnataka's power corridors. All right, now Pawan Kalyan in Andhra Pradesh. Is he someone who is right now positioning himself as a driving force in Andhra Pradesh? Many questions being raised after the comment that he made at one of his own events. At the Janasena's 12th Foundation Day event in Pitapuram, the party chief made a series of bold statements suggesting that his party, not the TDP, in fact, he particularly mentioned his Janasena party, to be the most critical role or played the most critical role in shaping the NDA's success. This is what Pawan Kalyan said, saying if not for me, the party wouldn't have come to power, that we wouldn't have come to power, collectively speaking of TDP. Now, speaking at that massive rally, Pawan Kalyan declared that it was Janasena that revived the 40-year-old TDP when it was going through a rough and tough patch. He's credited his party for securing a 100% strike rate by winning all 21 seats it contested under the NDA alliance, and also claimed Janasena's support was really instrumental in NDA winning 164 seats in Andhra Pradesh. The actor turned politician has recalled his unwavering support for Chandrababu Naidu. In this lengthy speech, he's also gone on to say that when Chandrababu Naidu was arrested back in 2023, I was the one who stood by Chandrababu Naidu, the TDP Supremo. When the party needed me the most, I stood by him. Of course, he did not miss that opportunity to take a jibe at YSRCP. He's reminded the crowds how YSRCP had once said and mocked that he would never be able to enter the assembly. But look at him. Today, he's celebrating a stunning victory with what he calls the Jaya Keetanam, the flag of victory. Boasts Pawan Kalyan at that event. Of course, questions being asked about Pawan Kalyan now positioning himself. Who really is leading and heading the party in Andhra Pradesh? Now, there was disturbing visuals that surfaced earlier today where we saw images and pictures, posters of Bhindranwale being posted on some of the buses that were plying from Punjab to Himachal Pradesh. As we look here, this viral video from Punjab's Hoshiarpur shows Dal Khalsa activists pasting pictures of Khalistani separatist Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale on Himachal's buses. The activists stopped vehicles from Himachal Pradesh forcibly, stopping them and pasting those posters on those buses. This comes just days after a row in Manali, where tourists from Punjab displayed flags with Bhindranwale's image on their bikes. So far, no complaint has been filed formally here, but officials say that action will be taken against anyone trying to disrupt law and order. The issue, as expected, reached the Himachal Pradesh Assembly. The leader of opposition, Jairam Thakur, has called for strict action here, while Chief Minister Sukhwinder Singh Sukhu says talks with Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann will resolve the situation.
ये घटना देवभूमि हिमाचल प्रदेश में जिस प्रकार से घटित हुई है, ये कई तरह के संकेत दे रही है। एक हिमाचल प्रदेश में एक वातावरण और खराब करने की दृष्टि से एक चीज जो घटित हो रही है पिछले कुछ अरसे से मीडिया में भी आपने देखा होगा। हमारे पड़ोसी राज्य के नौजवान हिमाचल प्रदेश में आते हैं, उनका स्वागत है, लेकिन जिस तरह से हुड़दंग यहां पर मचा रहे हैं, जिस तरह से भिंडरावाला का फोटो लगा करके वो अपने वाहनों पर, गाड़ियों पर झंडे लगा करके उनके सम्मान में बातें कह रहे हैं, और जब उनको रोका जा रहा है तो वो कानून व्यवस्था की धज्जियां उड़ा रहे हैं।
Right, it was an interesting start to the Raisina Dialogue 2025. We saw a fiery talk by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. As always, he set the stage for a sharp debate, and this time on Kashmir, delivering quite a piercing critique of the UN over its handling of Kashmir. S. Jaishankar, hitting hard, slammed the conflict that was misrepresented globally, arguing that it was UN's job to set the record straight. He argued that when India went to UN for intervention, an invasion was turned into a dispute. He held several Western nations accountable for shaping this narrative that challenged India's sovereignty. Now, with these strong words, S. Jaishankar has left the UN with a lot to answer for, a message that could reshape global conversations henceforth on Kashmir. Let's have a listen.
After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So, the attacker and the victim were put on par. We speak today of political interference. When the West goes out into other countries, it's apparently in pursuance of democratic freedoms. When other countries come into the West, it seems to have a very malign intention. So I think we need, if to have an order, there must be fairness. I agree with you, Dominic, we need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN.
All right, several headlines were made at the Raisina Dialogue, an event where the intelligence officers from across countries and secret service officials gathered in Delhi. Very interesting to see Delhi as the central point for their gathering. In fact, officials from top 20 countries, including the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and a host of others who congregated all to discuss global security. Now, amid this backdrop, it was Tulsi Gabbard, the US Director of National Intelligence, who delivered a key address stressing that global peace is essential for security and prosperity. Speaking of US-India ties, Tulsi Gabbard underscored, America first is not America alone. Here's what she said. She says it was interesting to see that the country, across countries, intelligence officials came together to discuss because global peace and security is of utmost priority now. Delhi really becoming the epicenter for global diplomacy. Let's hear it from Tulsi Gabbard.
The vast and critical region that's not just a geographic space, it is the geopolitical center of gravity for the 21st century. So ensuring peace and stability here is essential to our collective security, our objective of economic prosperity, and our ability to work together to take on the great challenges of our time. And we must tackle these challenges together. So just as President Trump is committed to America first, putting the safety, security, and freedom of the American people at the forefront of his policies and his decisions, Prime Minister Modi is committed to India first. This is the expectation of any leader's commitment to their people, to serve them, to put their interests at the forefront of their decisions. But this should not be misunderstood to mean that America first is America alone. The relationships that we build together are critical to advance our mutual interests. And it's why gatherings like this here at Raisina are so important.
Now, Tulsi Gabbard seems to have come under fire from Bangladesh for speaking on minority persecution. In fact, Bangladesh says she's been misinformed. Bangladesh sharply has rejected the US intelligence chief Tulsi Gabbard's claims on minority persecution, calling them misleading, baseless, damaging. In a strong statement, the interim government has dismissed her remarks, warning against linking Bangladesh to an Islamic caliphate. Here's what Bangladesh said, and I quote, "This statement is both misleading and damaging to Bangladesh's image, a nation known for its exclusive and peaceful practice of Islam and its fight against extremism and terrorism." This is precisely the words used by the Bangladesh interim government, a formal word that's coming from the government criticizing Tulsi Gabbard, further slamming Gabbard for making sweeping generalizations without evidence, and urged global leaders to avoid rhetoric that fuels sectarian tensions. What did Tulsi Gabbard really say that warranted this reaction from Bangladesh? Speaking to a media network here in India, Tulsi Gabbard claimed the US is deeply concerned about persecution of minorities, of killing of minorities in Bangladesh, of abuse of Hindus, Buddhists and Christians in the country. She's tied the issue to global Islamist extremism, warning that radicals aim to establish a worldwide Islamic caliphate. Gabbard is among the few global figures raising issue of minorities allegedly being persecuted in Bangladesh. Her remarks has now sparked diplomatic flashpoint, with Bangladesh on their part standing firm against these allegations. Shifting our focus to Gaza, 400 killed in Gaza, possibly the deadliest strike that Israel has carried out against Gaza in the last few weeks. As we see Gaza, that once was barely a few days ago, not even a week that they managed to see peace, has now witnessed violence, and how 400 Palestinians we hear have been killed. Israel's heaviest bombardment since January ceasefire, staggering toll that at this point really that underscores the scale of devastation there. Gaza is already in ruins, and one can imagine the kind of pounding that's happened in the last 24 hours that's killed an additional 400 people. These strikes have come as Israel ramps up military pressure on Hamas, demanding the release of the 59 remaining hostages from its October 7th attack. Hamas refuses, says that they're going to keep those hostages with them until all civilians, Palestinian civilians that they've arrested are released. So this means that the war is unending, but at what cost? Israeli warplanes and tanks have pounded Gaza from north to south. Survivors say that bombings that have started now again feels like the war's first days. In Rafah, families who had cautiously returned after the ceasefire are fleeing yet again. Hospitals are collapsing under the weight of casualties. Images from inside Gaza show bodies wrapped in white plastic sheets. Many children who've died in this recent attack. We hear that aid deliveries to Gaza has also blocked off. They've been blocked off. That worsens the starvation and the suffering that they seem to be enduring. What we see here, though, Gaza, as much as it's left for itself, expected that there would be someone to come to their aid. But so far, we've seen most countries who've remained silent on the matter. Middle East, for example, it's just watching in silence. Gaza's neighbors have really done little to intervene. And yet amid all the ruins, Gazan families, if I could show you some images here, Gazan families have all gathered for iftar. It's the month of Ramzan. Gazans there coming together amid the wreck and breaking their fast. Iftar in the shadows of war. And meanwhile, Qatar negotiations remain stalled. Hamas demands permanent truce but Israeli withdrawal, while Israel itself not giving much here to Hamas except for a temporary ceasefire. And Trump has possibly carried out the most ruthless deportation drive in recent history. His bid to deport Venezuelans has come under court scrutiny. The US judge now is demanding answers from Trump on whether his administration blatantly defied court orders by deporting hundreds of Venezuelans, a move that legal experts claim to be unlawful and unprecedented. This could be one of the harshest immigration crackdowns in recent times. In fact, the visuals speak for themselves. Families torn apart, forced into planes, their fate sealed. Trump's team flouting law to push mass deportation is a question the court want answers.
A U.S. judge on Monday ordered the Trump administration to give details about the hundreds of Venezuelans it had deported, despite that judge blocking them from doing so. Judge James Boasberg also gave the administration until Tuesday to explain why it believed it had complied with his order. The White House said the more than 200 Venezuelans deported to El Salvador were members of the Tren de Aragua gang. The deportations happened over the weekend, many under an 18th century law known as the Alien Enemies Act, historically used only in wartime. Lee Gallant, a lawyer at the American Civil Liberties Union, spoke to reporters after Monday's hearing.
We had serious concerns going into the day that the government violated a federal court order. Today did nothing to dispel it. If anything, it reinforced that our view that the government may very well have violated this order, perhaps even knowingly violated. The president is simply thumbing his nose at Congress. Congress has said when you can use the Alien Enemies Act.
Also on Monday, White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt defended the administration's move.
This administration acted within the confines of the law, again, within the president's constitutional authority and under the authority granted to him under the Alien Enemies Act.
Monday's hearing followed a request by the government to remove the judge from the case. And shortly prior to the hearing, the Trump administration said the judge's directive to return any planes carrying the migrants was not enforceable because it was not in a written order. The administration also said it did not violate a subsequent written order because the planes had already departed when it was issued. Several legal experts interviewed by Reuters viewed the flights as a direct challenge to the judicial branch's independence. Meanwhile, the president of Venezuela's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, said the deported men were denied due process by the U.S. Since taking office in January, Trump has sought to push the boundaries of executive power, cutting spending authorized by Congress, dismantling agencies, and firing tens of thousands of federal workers.
All right, on that note, we're slipping into a short break, coming back with our deep dive segment on scores of home buyers who now finally get relief from the Supreme Court as the court steps in, cracks a whip on builders and banks. A lot more on that on the other side. Stay with us.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.